Jaxson Dart and the New York Giants are 1 for 1. Can they make it 2 for 2 in the house of horrors known as the Louisiana Superdome? Let's talk about it next on the Big Blue Breakdown live. Hi again, everybody. I'm Paul Dottino, and welcome back to the Big Blue Breakdown Live. As you know, we're here every Wednesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern Time to do at least an hour, usually 90 minutes, of talking New York Giants football. We'll go over the news of the week. We'll talk about the game coming up this weekend against the Saints. And, of course, we're here to answer your chats and your audio and video calls. And we've got a new way to get in touch with the show. If you don't want to go through the link at the bottom of the screen that you see right below me here, well, you can go up to that QR code over in the corner. You see that thing over there? Well, if you have the StreamYard app, you can just put your cell phone up to that QR code, do a little click, and all of a sudden, boy, you can get right into the studio with me. We're trying to make it easier for you folks to reach out, and we can then have a conversation about the New York Football Giants. All right, the first thing that I want to do today is just kind of get you updated a little bit on what's been happening over at Giants Stadium for the Giants camp, I should say, not the stadium, but the training facility over the course of the last few days. We know that Jaxson Dart won his first pro start on Sunday against the Chargers. We also know that Malik Neighbors, ripped up his knee, and he's out for the season. To this point, the Giants have yet to add a wide receiver. Now, I know you've seen some names bandied about as potential guys to come in for a workout. But at this point, that's all it would be. The Giants don't have an awful lot of money under their salary cap to make moves. So I know a lot of you were hoping they would sign a free agent wide receiver off the street. The selection is not all that attractive anyway. But having said that, again, they don't have very much money. So if they were going to be interested in a wide receiver off the street, that guy's going to have to be appreciably better than what they already think they have in the building, either on the roster or, for that matter, little Jordan Humphrey is on the practice squad. So is Dalen Cambry. Well, who out there is going to guarantee you more immediate production than those guys who would be all the way at the back of your depth chart at wide receiver on game day anyway? So as it stands now, I would say it's probably more likely than not that the Giants do not bring in a wide receiver off the street. But that's just how I see it at the moment. It doesn't mean that it can't happen. It doesn't mean that it won't happen. But at this point, I would be surprised if they brought in a wide receiver off the street. All right, so let's get to what's going on down at training camp. First things first, linebacker Tamon Fox is this year's human yo-yo. He's already been bounced up and down between the practice squad, the waiver wire, the 53, I believe 3 times already in the first month of the season. He is back on the practice squad once again today. North Carolina pass rusher, terrific young kid, showed a lot of flashes when he got here as an undrafted rookie free agent last season. They like him because he's very responsive, he's very coachable, brings a lot of enthusiasm. Listens, like I say, to coaching, plays special teams whenever he is actually in a game, and, has done some things when he actually had an opportunity last year as a rookie to get on the field. He did show some flashes. So anyway, he is this year's yo-yo, if you will. So that's what happened today in terms of the roster. Now, in terms of the injury report, a lot of people look at what happened with today's injury report and they say, holy smokes, it's really, really long. Should that be a concern? Well, Dexter Lawrence did not practice because he's ill. Tyrone Tracy did not practice because he still has the effects of his separated shoulder, although I will tell you that does not appear to be a long-term thing. I think we told you on last week's show he might only miss a couple of games. Remember, they didn't put him on injury reserve, which would mean a minimum of 4 games missed. So they obviously don't think he's going to miss 4 games either. Tyler Newman, sore groin, did get out there and do warm-ups, and then did not participate in any of the practice sessions. I don't necessarily think that is so horrible either. I would expect he's probably still more on the upside to play than not. And then Greg Van Roten was given a Veterans Day off. Again, the infamous load management. So those were the guys who did not practice. Now, there were a slew of guys who were listed as limited, but I think most importantly, in terms of changes from what we saw, okay, in terms of what we saw with the practice schedule last week, defensive end Chauncey Golston is back at practice on a limited basis after his sprained ankle cost him the last 2 games. Why is that important? Chauncey Golston is a very good at the line pass defender. He's one of those guys who has length, size, and does a really good job at knocking passes down at the line of scrimmage. It is a Golston specialty. He did it very well with the Dallas Cowboys, and this year in his first year with the Giants, we saw him do it during training camp. We saw him do it over the summer at OTAs and minicamp. He is very, very, for some reason, he's just very adept, almost like a basketball player. He knows how to read the ball and knows to get his hands up there and knock it down. And I equate it to a basketball player who has instinctiveness and a nose for the basketball to get after rebounds. That's what Chauncey Golston is. That is incredibly important against a shorter quarterback like Rattler with the New Orleans Saints. He does have some trouble seeing over taller defensive linemen. And so I think Golston would be a very, very valuable addition for the Giants if he is able to make it this Sunday. And it looks like he's trending towards that possibility. Nacho, Rakeem Nunez-Roches, Giants defensive tackle, limited at practice today because of his sore foot. Again, he'd missed the last couple of weeks, but it was good to see him start ramping back up. That would be another guy they could use in the rotation up front. 2 guys who practiced in full today were both significantly belted around and bruised up in the game against the Chargers. That would be your quarterback, Jaxson Dart, and your favorite running back, Cam Skattebo. Now, Skattebo's got a sore knee. And man, oh man, do you know that Skattebo had only a combined 23 carries after the Giants' first 3 games of the season and had 25 carries alone in Sunday's win over the Chargers. He took on a workload that was certainly not expected. I think a lot of people thought that Singletary might share it a little bit more, but it wasn't the case. Skattebo was effective. He moved the piles. He moved the chains. They kept feeding him. It became a 25-carry day. And, of course, what happened? He needed some buckets of ice after that one for sure. So that's the deal. Skattebo with a sore knee, but he did practice in full today. So I don't have any doubts or questions in my mind that he is going to be able to play in Sunday's game against the Saints. The other gentleman by the name of Dart, yeah, you know him, the rookie who had his first pro start last weekend. The Giants also saying that even though he had that sore hamstring, you remember he hurt it second half of the game, he was somewhat limited. Not a big deal today. Did not appear to be. He took every snap full in practice. He was wearing the compression sleeves today on his legs. Some of the writers immediately got all freaked out by that when they saw him during the media portion of practice. They were thinking the worst, that, he's got to wear the sleeves. He must be. And then Scatterboo told them, not Scatterboo, Dart told them after practice was over at the podium, yeah, I've been wearing compression sleeves on my legs my entire career since college. So once again, some false panic out there, but not necessary. So Dart is A-OK and ready to go. I just wanted to point out one item to you that Scatterboo, when we talk about the workload that he had last year or last week, in looking over his collegiate stats at Arizona State, that's where he played in his last 2 college seasons after a transfer. He carried the ball 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times, 25 times or more in his last season with the Sun Devils. 5 different times he carried the ball 25 times or more. So while it was an unbelievable ramp up for him after the first 3 weeks of, substitute action, this was the kind of day that was more reminiscent of what he did last year when he was at Arizona State. So I'm sure he didn't expect necessarily 25 carries. He probably was thinking he was going to get something in the area of 20. So that's a lot of collisions, and they were tough yards. They were dirty yards. Scatterboo was really ramming it up there between the tackles. And so, he took a pounding. All right. So that's basically to get you caught up on some of the news of the week and the injury situation as far as the Giants go. Now, as far as the Saints go, and this is very interesting. The Giants are 1-3. The Saints are 0-4. Now, for those of you who have not kept track of New Orleans, I'm just going to give this to you real quick. I'm going to read it to you only because I'm sure a lot of you haven't bothered to look it up and probably don't even want to look it up. They lost to the Cardinals 20-13. They lost to San Francisco 26-21. They lost to Seattle 45-13, and they lost to Buffalo 31-19 in a game that was close late, and then Buffalo kind of put the hammer down and finished them off. Here's what you want to know. They're averaging 16 points a game on offense and giving up 30 points a game on defense. The Giants are at 18 a game on offense and 25 on defense. So there doesn't seem to be a lot of variables there in terms of the numbers, but think about it this way. The Giants have been a little more consistent defensively because in their 4 games, and as poorly as they've played in terms of yardage allowed, the Giants have not given up a ton of points. You look at the 25 after 4 games in terms of an average, and it sounds like a lot. But they've given up 21, 40 in the game to the Cowboys, 22, and 18. So that's 3 games out of the 4, 22 or less. So you're right, folks. The Giants defense did not live up to expectation during the first 3 weeks of the season. I thought they played to their standard in week 4. And we told you it was going to take 3 or 4 weeks for this defense and Dexter Lawrence to find their sea legs. Well, indeed, they found their sea legs against a Chargers offensive line that was being shuffled and was beaten up. And they paid the price for playing the New York Giants as Justin Herbert faced 20 quarterback pressures and 12 quarterback hits. Although only 2 sacks, he was harassed all day long. There's no question about the difference in quality between Justin Herbert and Spencer Rattler. I mean, they're not even close to being the same guy. So if the Giants can apply that kind of heat on Spencer Rattler, it will be a very, very long day for the New Orleans Saints. Now, it is interesting, by the way, that some of the fans and the media on Monday, after the New Orleans Saints dropped to 0-4, was screaming for Rattler's job. They're actually campaigning to get the rookie Tyler Shuck in there. But apparently the Saints are going to hold the line at least for another week or two with Rattler. So that's who the Giants are going to face. At least that's who they're expecting to face as we talk to you live on Wednesday night. Now, I think one of the things you want to look at when you look at this Saints team, they do have an impressive running game. Between Miller and Kamara, okay, they've got Miller, the inside guy, between the tackles, and they've got Kamara, who is always a threat to the outside. The guy's been doing this now for a decade in this league, multiple-time Pro Bowl player, and just finds a way to get it done. Giants fans know all about Kamara because let me give you a number here. Has 490 yards from scrimmage. That's 122 per game, and 3 rushing touchdowns in 4 career games against the Giants. He has been a real problem for most people in the league, but certainly for Big Blue. Kamara is coming off a 70-yard rushing performance last week. His best rushing performance of the season was against the San Francisco 49ers, 21 carries for 99 yards. So he's yet to have a 100-yard rushing outing. But here's what you got to remember about Kamara. He has always been a big threat in the passing game. In fact, here's a little bit of Giants trivia for you. Kamara has 586 career catches. He is tied with Giants legend Tiki Barber for 6th place all time in catches by an NFL running back. How about that? So I'll mention that to Tiki when we talk during the pregame show this weekend on WFAN. So they've obviously got the run game with the two-headed monster between Kamara and Miller. Their passing game, it's a bunch of quick game, okay? It's quick game, get the ball out fast, short passes. This is really amazing. The Saints are averaging only 7.8 yards per catch as a team and don't have a single player averaging at least 10 yards a catch. Not one. Even Chris Olave, the outstanding route runner, who's got glue for hands and is tied for 6th in the NFL with 26 catches, has a long of 14 yards. He's averaging 7 yards a grab. Now, to put this into perspective, remember last year how Wan'Dale Robinson caught over 90 balls for the Giants and averaged less than 10 yards a catch? Olave is at less than 7.5 yards a catch. He's a wide receiver, for goodness sakes. That says an awful lot about where the Saints' passing game is. Juwan Johnson ranks 3rd among tight ends this year in the NFL with 22 catches. But you know what I'm going to tell you, right? He's averaging less than 9.5 yards a catch. And Rashid Shaheed, their kick return specialist, and he's been a very good one for a long time, he is their leading receiver in average yards per catch at 9.7. Think about that. And he is the only player through 4 games who has caught a pass that went for more than 21 yards for the New Orleans Saints offense. So to say that they are basically one-dimensional Yeah. But boy, that dimension's good. 34 carries for 189 yards rushing against the Buffalo Bills the other day. And, oh, by the way, the Bills don't have a very good rushing defense. And it showed because the Saints were very willing to take advantage of that. On the other side of the ball, and this is pretty important, the Saints, well, let's put it this way. The strength of their defense is in their linebacking core. Okay? It's just that simple. Werner and Davis. That's what it's all about for the Saints. It's Werner and Davis. Chase Young is out with a calf. He's their edge rusher. He's playing on the left side of the defense these days. You know, he's been an often injured bust ever since he came into the league with the Washington then Redskins. They've got Cameron Jordan backing him up. As you probably know, and I'm going to read the numbers here, Jordan is in his 15th season. He's gone to 8 Pro Bowls. And, oh, yeah, by the way, he is second among active players in the NFL in sacks right now. And that shouldn't surprise you because, again, he's been around forever. He's got 124 career sacks. So he's backing up Chase Young on the left edge of the Saints defense. They would go up, obviously. That side goes up against Jermaine Illuminor. That's basically what we're talking about here. It's Werner. It's Demario Davis. Carl Granderson is on the right edge. He's been a good player, certainly, over the course of time. That's the strength of their team right there in terms of the defense. We know that Paulson Adebo escaped by taking a rich free agent contract with the Giants this year, and that was a very big deal. Believe it or not, Isaac Yiadom, and you Giants fans will remember Isaac Yiadom from a handful of years ago. If you recall, he had played with the Denver Broncos, and the Giants wound up picking him up, but he was here for a year or so. Kind of a pedestrian player. He's bounced around. He's actually starting at left corner for the Saints. He's allowed 11 completions on 13 targets for 128 yards so far this year. And Kool-Aid McKinstry, their second-round pick from last year, has not lived up to expectations. They've changed their scheme from last season when he was a rookie. And he has allowed 12 completions on 16 targets for 193 yards and 2 touchdowns. Yeah, the corners in New Orleans are not very impressive. Now, Justin Reed, the former Kansas City Chief, is at strong safety, and Jonas Sanker, who was a third-round pick in this year's draft, one of the better safeties in this year's draft. Those are the 2 safeties. Reed was a guy who played well for the Chiefs for a while. Sanker last week against Buffalo, 5 tackles, 3 passes defensed, and he had an interception. So basically, the Saints have a very unbalanced defense. They've got a few guys who are really good, but then the rest of their starting lineup on defense, not so much. And as we said, they're very lopsided on offense. Basically, they're a run team. Now, it ought to be noted that guys who did not practice for the Saints today, and this does not help their cause at all. Starting left guard Trevor Penning with an ankle, that's a big deal. Cesar Ruiz, their starting right guard, did not practice. He's actually out for almost a month with a significant ankle injury. Dylan Raduns. He's another one of their supposed starting linemen going into the season. They like him to play some center and guard. He was supposed to be one of their starting 5 coming out of training camp. He's got a toe, and he didn't practice. So their line's pretty banged up. And Juwan Johnson, their starting tight end, who I mentioned just before, well, he didn't practice today because he's got an ankle. All of these things are really, really bad for you if you're the Saints, because we saw what the Giants did to a banged-up Chargers offensive line. And now they are potentially going into New Orleans with a banged-up Saints offensive line. We could see a very similar game play out with the Giants front just dominating throughout the course of the day. Of course, there is one thing that could change all of this. The voodoo dolls in the New Orleans, Louisiana Superdome. The building was built and opened in 1975. Believe it or not, that long ago. That's the place where Muhammad Ali beat Leon Spinks in their second fight. It was the rematch. And, well, that place has not been kind to the Giants. They are 4-9 lifetime at games in the Louisiana Superdome. And you guys know most of them were blowouts. And there was another game that was decided by a special teams face mask penalty that allowed the Saints to kick a 50-yard field goal at the final gun. Yeah. Then there was the game back in 2015 when one Drew Brees threw 7 touchdown passes, Eli Manning threw 6. And it was that game that was decided by that face mask and that 50-yard field goal. It's not been a pleasant place for the Giants to play. They have had all kinds of trouble in that building. Remember Joe Horn, the receiver who scored a touchdown in a Giants, crushing Giants defeat, went back to the padding of the uprights, the goalpost, and pulled out a marker like he was signing autographs? Yeah, that building, the New Orleans Superdome. It has been an absolute hellhole for the New York Football Giants. All right, so we are a half hour into the program, and it's time for me to get to your chats. And we'll see if you guys have any phone calls or any video calls. If you want to get in with the QR code, I'm all for it too. But let's get to your chats now. And I've taken a little bunch of your time, and I apologize for not getting to your comments earlier, but I really wanted to set the table for you because, look, the Giants are 1-3. Easily could have been 2-2, but they gave the Dallas game away. So they're 1-3. On paper, the road to victory or the paths to victory are certainly more plentiful and easier for the Giants this weekend than they are for the New Orleans Saints. So there's a realistic chance that the Giants could be 2-3 by the time Sunday night comes around. All of a sudden, you're a game under 500, and you've got the arch rival Eagles coming in the following Thursday night. Boy, wouldn't that be a hyped-up football game? But we take it one game at a time. Matt Seepersat says, good evening, everyone. Let's go get 2 in a row. All right, why not? Aiden Fink, good evening, Paul. Good win on Sunday. Let's keep it going. Next man up mentality with Neighbors done for the year. Prayers for number 1. Good luck with the zombies in New Orleans. Yeah. Folks, on the Big Blue Kickoff live show, I did relay a story that last time down in New Orleans, I went to Bourbon Street to do my usual exercise walk, my power walk that I do every Saturday before a Giants game. Actually, I do them every day, but I always make sure I do one when we go on the road. And I find a nice place to go in the visiting town that we're in, and I get my power walk in. And wouldn't you know it, I ran into a guy who was very, very pale, wearing a long black trench coat and insisting that he was a vampire. Well, he certainly looked the part, but I was not much interested in finding out any more detailed information about that particular gentleman. It was it was a story I have referred to on Big Blue Kickoff Live at least a couple of times over this past several months. No need to go into it here. Aiden Fink says, hi, it's time to shine. Had some good moments when Tyrod threw deep balls to him when Jones was hurt in 23. That's true. Love that Dart is trying to throw it deep. Scott Young says, good evening, Paul. I'm happy with the receivers. Possibly Hyatt get a shot, but I would really like to see Turbo Miller in the backfield with Scatterboo. Well, here's the problem, Scott. The Giants, who are obviously thin at running back, and they went with only two backs last week, as you guys know, Singletary and Scatterboo. Brian Dable was asked about that today. And he said basically they felt in the matchup against the Chargers, it was more important that they loaded up on other positions. Now, what you saw last week was that they added linebacker. They also had to have a kicker, because remember, Graham Gano is on injury reserve. He's going to miss a minimum of 3 more games. He's already missed 1. He's got to miss a minimum of 3 more. He did tell me today that he's already feeling healthy and feels like it won't be a problem for him to return once his IR time expires. Now, in the meantime, the Giants still have Younghoe Koo, the former Atlanta Falcon, and Jude McAtamney on the practice squad. Each player on the practice squad's allowed 3 call-ups or activations, if you will. McAtamney's been called up once, so he has 2 remaining. The Giants, at least this week and last week, they've had a kicking competition between McAtamney and Koo during the week. McAtamney won the kicking competition for the Chargers game. Obviously, they're having another kicking competition this week, and they will use a practice squad activation on either McAtamney or Koo to kick against the Saints. The point being, McAtamney has 2 activations left. Koo has all 3 of his left right now. So between the 2 kickers, they could, if they need be, they've got 5 games, including the Saints game, where they have a kicker that they'll be able to use without having to make a move with Graham Gano. Whether or not they leave him to injury reserve depends on what's going on with his leg, or if they want to bring him back, remains to be seen. Or if they decide that one of these young kickers is doing so well, maybe they just want to roll with one of these young guys. Who knows? The point is, they don't have to be in a hurry. They actually have, between the 2 practice squad kickers, 5 weeks of activations still left. Now that means the Saints, the Eagles, the Broncos, the Eagles, and the 49ers, they don't actually have to decide if they don't want to on a kicker until the November 9th game in Chicago. So that's something to keep in mind as far as the roster is concerned. But what that does do, it eliminates another position being called up, because you get 2 activations per game. Usually they're using one of those activations for a special teams guy. Well, they've had to reserve one activation now, last week, and in all likelihood this week, because I don't think they're going to sign McAtamney or Koo to the 53. I think they will continue just to use a practice squad activation each week on a kicker. And by the way, there is something I wanted to add to you folks, and I'll mention this when I'm back on Big Blue Kickoff Live, the daytime show on Giants.com on Friday. But I do want to mention this. Another thing that I had tried to explain over the course of the summer was that the Giants were going to put a significant emphasis on special teams. Well, that's exactly what they've done. And I want to bring this to your attention because it's significant. The New York Giants right now are fourth in the National Football League in covering punts, allowing less than 4 yards per punt return. They have been sensational in their punt coverage. The longest punt return against the Giants this year is only 11 yards so far. On kickoff return coverage, they are fifth in the NFL, giving up an average of less than 24 yards per kickoff return. The longest they've given up was 36. So they are top 5 in both punt coverage and kickoff return coverage. Something I told you guys all summer. They were going to try to dominate on special teams, and kick coverage was something that they were putting a great emphasis on because they wanted to be able to tilt the field to help both their offense and their defense. Well, the offense and the defense haven't exactly kept up their ends of the bargain in each of the first 4 weeks. But the special teams unit has tilted the field. Kickoff return wise, the Giants are 10th in the NFL at over 26 yards per return. So think about that. I just gave you 3 key return categories on specials. Giants are top 10 in each. Where they haven't been particularly great is on punt returns. Gunnar Olszewski averaging 9.3 yards per punt return with only a long of 21. The Giants are 22nd in the league on punt returns. That is the one special teams aspect where they have not been able to dominate. But I would say, being that they're top 10 in the other 3 categories and actually top 5 in 2 of them, you have to give tremendous credit to special teams coordinator Michael Golbriel and the Giants front office for signing a bunch of fringe guys who have turned out to be really, really good special teams coverage players. So I bring that to your attention because I made a big deal out of it in the summer, and I didn't want you guys to think that I had forgotten about it. It's a big deal, and it's proven to be true. They have gotten what they asked for out of those units. Matt Seepersad says, Paul, I'm hoping you have the Yankees game off to the side somewhere. Matt, I got thoroughly disgusted. They were up 2-0, and then they were up 3-2, and they're tied 3-3. And I really don't like giving away leads. It turns my stomach. And so right now, I'd rather concentrate on this program. Gary Gaston says, hi, P. Dot. I think we should work the screen game this week. How do you feel about that? Well, I mean, to be honest with you, I don't have a problem with it. We told you last week that that wouldn't be such a bad idea. You know, the Giants ran the ball 42 times last week, and Dart only threw 21 pass attempts. Now, he did get sacked 5 times. Russell Wilson got sacked once when he came in for a few plays. So 21 attempts, the 5 sacks, it's 26 pass plays. There were a couple of scrambles in there where Dart might have thought about throwing it and then took off. So figure maybe, I don't know, 28 pass plays maybe that they actually were going to execute from the snap, but they ran the ball 42 times, which once again proves the axiom that I keep telling you guys about for years. You've got to be able to run the football. And they did. And they won the game. Because especially when you are a middleweight kind of team, you don't want to be throwing the ball 35 times a game. It's a bad idea. Bad things are going to happen. You're going to get your quarterback hit. You're going to wind up having issues with penalties because the offensive line is going to get careless and make mistakes. You also, of course, always have the ever dangerous interception in play. Giants did a great job last week. They got a 10-point lead. They were up 10-0 early in the game. And it allowed them to be more than balanced. It allowed them to be top-heavy with the run. And then they could lean on their defense. The game flow played perfectly, even more so than anyone could have imagined, into the Giants' hands, all because of the 2 interceptions that they ran back inside the Chargers' 5-yard line. Now, the sticky part is that they settled for only 10 points off of those 2 picks instead of 2 touchdowns. They had to get a field goal and a touchdown. If they had gotten the 2 touchdowns like they were supposed to have done, and then if Wan'Dale Robinson had held on to a 4th down pass in the end zone that was right in his hands, well, then you wouldn't have had to be skipping some breaths during the final minutes of the game as the Giants tried to milk the clock. And by the way, they did a good job. They did milk it like they did in Dallas. They milked it a little further this time thanks to a 3rd down conversion from Jaxson Dart to tight end Theo Johnson. And then a defense that held on in the final 11 seconds. Thank goodness. But that's the way for this Giants team to be competitive against a very brutal schedule. Be at the very least balanced, and you have to be top heavy on the run, then be top heavy on the run. But score points in the first quarter. Get yourself a lead. Let your defense go to work. They can wear people down. They can make big plays. Now that they're the Giants defense, again, it took them 4 games to do it. They finally hit their stride. I knew it was going to take 3 to 4 weeks. I hoped it would only be 3. It turned out to be 4. So now that the Giants defense has shown up, it's time to ride them. Put them in position to control the game flow so that they can win games for you. That's the idea. All right. Melvin says, be big. I'm not sure exactly what that means, Melvin, but thank you for your comment. Aiden Fink says, can't call New Orleans a hellhole for the Giants. That would be Philadelphia. Aiden, Giants have lost 9 times on their last 13 trips to New Orleans. Again, that's since the Superdome was built in 95. I want you to understand something. 75. I want you to understand something. Many of those games were ugly as sin. And I mean really, really ugly. So please don't tell me that that's not a house of horrors. Please don't tell me that the Saints don't have voodoo dolls lurking somewhere inside the ceiling of that building, because they do. All right. Yeah. 1995. Yeah, 1995. The building opened in 95. No, hold on a second. Oh, my goodness. I looked this up this morning. 75. Yes. I had it right before when I said 75. It's just terrible. Just terrible. And the Giants are 4-9 in that building. Since that time, they had one Saints home game that had to be played at Giant Stadium because of Katrina. Hurricane Katrina forced them to move the Saints home game to Giant Stadium, and they decorated Giant Stadium with all kinds of black and gold Saints paraphernalia to make it a Saints home game, but the Giants prevailed anyway. Oh, my goodness. Just to give you an idea, Aiden, the Giants have lost games in New Orleans 45-7 back in 2003. Okay. 49-24 in 2011, 48-27 in 2009. Let's see what else here. I mean, there have been blowouts. It's just, no. I'm not going to let you get away with that. It is a hellhole for the Giants. That's just the way it is. Let me see. Is there another one here that really makes you nauseous? Yeah, it's just a bunch of bad games here. Oh, golly. Oh, no, I don't want to look anymore. I can't do it. I just can't look anymore. It hurts too much. Aiden, the Superdome is a house of voodoo for the Giants. That's what it is. JCC, hey, Paul. So just looked at the NFL app, and it was discussing their cap space. I see a lot of cap hits that won't be there again next year, so they are against it. Yeah. The Giants don't have a lot of cap room right now. And you're right. Next year, they're going to be in pretty good shape. But right now, for 2025, no. You know why? They signed a slew of free agents this year. A slew. They also had to, delve out some money to some of their other guys. But, I mean, when you consider, some of the periphery players, right? Flanagan Fowles and Board, who are important on special teams. Okay? These were important signings. The Giants went out of their way to make sure that they would be a winner on special teams each and every week. And it's working. Scott Young says, he's one of our regulars, now that Dart is in at quarterback, do you see this team improving in the red zone? It's been very frustrating watching them kick field goals last week. The defense gave them great opportunities. Well, Scott, here's the one thing I can say about that. Two things I can say about that. First of all, Andrew Thomas played the entire game against the Chargers. And did you notice the difference? I get it. They gave up 6 sacks as a team. Fine. Throw that in my face. I accept that. But did you notice that they were, 7 of 15 on third down conversions? It was something like that. Really terrific third down conversion rate. And a lot of that had to do with Dart's legs. Now, you guys know, I'm of the belief that I really don't like my quarterback running more than 4 times a game. My quarterback should never lead the team in rushing in any given game, and he certainly should not be rushing for 1,000 yards. I thought Daniel Jones ran too much. I think quarterbacks should run to throw the ball. They should extend plays, okay? Extend plays to make plays, not run to run forward for yardage, because that's a very dangerous habit to have. Jaxson Dart almost made me gasp today when he was asked about, do you think you regret running so much? Are you going to be more careful about it? And he goes, well, he understands there are times and places for it. And you know, if you can get out of bounds, fine. But he said one thing that was really scary. And I hope it doesn't come back to bite him. He said, a lot of my runs were on third down. I'm not going to slide short of the sticks. He's got a running back mentality. He wants that first down. He's taking off. He's trying to get that first down. And he's not going to shy away from anybody. He did that under Lane Kiffin at USC and at Ole Miss. And Kiffin told him, you got to learn to slide. He kept running around like a running back. And now he's doing it again with the Giants. Let's hope that it doesn't come back to bite him. But here's what I will say, Scott. Yes, Jaxson Dart, as a rookie, is much more of a threat to run than Russell Wilson is at 14 years in the NFL. So that should help. Now, it didn't help this past weekend. No, it did not. Not at all. But it should help. Number two, we go back to Andrew Thomas again. Andrew Thomas played the entire game against the Chargers. And the Giants ran the ball pretty darn well. Effectively. Wasn't great in terms of average yards per carry for the running backs. But we know that Singletary and Scatterboo combined for over 100 yards together. And then Dart using his legs. I think the Giants ran for over 150 yards against Los Angeles. That's a really good number. A really good number. And that's really good when you get down inside the deep red zone, which is the 10-yard line or in. So yes, Scott, Andrew Thomas is back. That gives the Giants a better offensive line. Case closed. No point in even discussing that. They are a better offensive line when he plays. So yes, you would think that they will be better in the red zone. It wasn't necessarily that way this past Sunday, but I would expect that it will be moving forward. Aiden Fink says, more saying in comparison. He's talking about the comparison between Philadelphia, the Link, and the Superdome. All right, Aiden, House of Voodoo does not fit Philadelphia or the Link. It absolutely fits a Halloween-style town known as New Orleans. So why don't we just go with the Superdome is a house of voodoo? Okay, why don't we just go with that? And if you want to call the Link a hellhole, be my guest. Call the Link a hellhole. That's perfectly acceptable to me. Matt Seepersad says, Paul, who's the starting corner opposite Paulson Adebo? Is it Flott? Is it Banks? The rotation doesn't seem to be working on the back end. Honestly, I do think they're going to continue with the matchups. I would think Flott will get more work this week than Banks will. But that's just the suspicion based on the matchups. And by the way, did you see how Cordell Flott helped save the game against the Chargers the other day? What was it, about 11 seconds to go? And the Chargers had the ball in their own territory. And Herbert threw the ball to the left sideline, which would have been near side of your television screen, the Chargers sideline, if you will. And Quentin Johnston was wide open. And there's no one on that side of the field except for Cordell Flott. And what did Cordell Flott do? He made a one-on-one tackle, came up hard, wrapped up Johnson, and wrestled him to the ground to the point where he wasn't going to get away, even though he had, I can't even begin to describe to you how much daylight on the right side of the field, or what would have been the Chargers' left side of their offense. He had so much daylight in front of that Chargers bench, he could have run forever. I'm not saying he would have gone all the way. And the clock would have run out at some point. But who knows? Could he have possibly run all the way up to the 50-yard line and then ran out of bounds and given them a shot at a 67-yard field goal? Yeah, maybe he could have. Cordell Flott made a one-on-one tackle that was awesome. He saw him, he lined him up, and he took him down. Big time play by Cordell Flott. With the way the Giants got burned in Dallas, Cordell Flott wasn't letting that happen against the Chargers. Matt Seepersad says, with the way Russell Wilson look coming off the bench, I don't see how we don't promote Jameis Winston to number 2. Jameis Winston's propensity to turn the ball over is just not something you want to do. And I know Wilson came in cold. They blitzed. They got to him. They sacked him. He recovered his own fumble. I get it. It was an ugly play. But did you see what Wilson did against the Cowboys? 450 yards through the air. No. I got no problem with them leaving Wilson at number 2. Matt does bring up a good point, though. Flott is an LSU guy. That is correct. He's going to want to show up and show out for the hometown. So says Matt. You know what, Matt? I could absolutely see that. He's a really good guy, by the way, and much more talented than people have given him credit for. And the truth of the matter is, he's also a fun guy who enjoys playing the game. So I do think he is going to ball out as an LSU alum going back down there. I do think that's very cool. So nice call, Matt. I should have brought up the LSU connection earlier. Matt also says the kicker would have made 67 yards if it was against us. Great play by Flott for sure. I'm of the belief that if any kicker in this league wants to hit a 70-yarder in a regulation game, they will do it against the Giants. I'm convinced. I'm convinced. In fact, Matt, mark this down somewhere on a notepad. The Giants are playing at Denver on Sunday, October 19th, week 7. As you know, Denver's notorious for its thin air. And it's always been known that kickers and punters do much better in terms of length in Denver than a lot of other stadiums, especially outdoor stadiums in the National Football League. So, Matt, if you want to jot down that the Giants are going to get hit by a 70-yard field goal, yeah, Denver would probably be the place to be. That wouldn't shock me. James O'Keefe says, Paul, do you think McFadden will be back at all this season, or is he most likely out? No, there's hope. There is hope by the team and by Micah McFadden himself that he will be able to make it back, perhaps for the final month of the season. I do know that is what they've said. That is what Micah has told me. I can't tell you 100% that it's going to work out that way, but that is the hope. And that's cool. Let's see if it works out that way. And let's see here. It does appear, folks, that the Yankees have defeated the Boston Red Sox 4-3. I'm just looking at it, checking on the game day or Gamecast on my phone because I didn't want to be rude and watch the game or actually get upset or sickened by the game while we were doing this Giants show. But the Bronx Bombers have prevailed. They have knocked off the Beantowners 4-3 at Yankee Stadium. And there will be a Game 3 tomorrow night at the Big Bull Yard in the South Bronx as the Pinstripes have continued to roll forward. Very nice. Very nice. All right. What else do we have here? We'll go on a little bit longer, folks. Hopefully somebody from the Yankees game, some of you folks who are Giants and Yankees fans, will come on and join us on the program. I'm going to try to go another 15 minutes or so and see if we can get more people tuning out after the Yankees game. And then we'll see. Maybe we'll go to the bottom of the hour. Maybe we won't. The Focus says, didn't Wilson come in on a 2nd and 20? People just love to hate the guy. He barely had a real shot at this season. Look, quarterbacks are always going to be a magnet, the Focus. That's the way it is. You know, I hate to say this because it's purely speculation. But had the Giants not given up that 64-yard field goal at the gun in the fourth quarter in Dallas, and Russell Wilson had that 450-yard performance, and the Giants held on, the defense did its job, and they won the game, Russell Wilson probably would have been Player of the Week in the NFL, Offensive Player of the Week. The Giants would have been 1-1. And I suspect, but I don't know, this story might be playing out a little bit differently today. But there's no sense in talking about it because that's a hypothetical. What's done is done. This is the reality. This is where we are. And we can only talk about the truth and what is. Scott Young says, I do agree with you, Paul. I'm scared to death watching the quarterback run all over the field, especially when Dart on 3rd and 1 took 2 shots on the right shoulder. He doesn't slide, Scott. He just doesn't. That's scary. Again, you understand. If you've watched me at all, 17 years I've been with the Giants broadcast team. I've been covering the team for 43. I have made it eminently clear from the beginning. I'm not a big fan of having my quarterback run a whole heck of a lot on game day. And I certainly screamed at Eli Manning many a times in my own head, slide, feet first, slide. Eli was not very good at it. Jaxson Dart apparently doesn't have it in him. That's a concern. Daniel Jones ran more than Eli. But at least he was better at sliding. I should say, Scott, by the way, Jaxson Dart did say today he does regret trying to stiff arm that one Chargers defender, and he knows that's probably not a good idea. I'm glad for that. James O'Keefe says the Chargers punter was booming distance and getting serious hang time on Sunday. How about the 69-yard punt by Jamie Gillen? Giants fumbled the snap exchange. Jaxson Dart at his own 1-yard line. And Andrew Thomas fell on it. 13-10 Giants lead at the time. Chargers recover that fumble. I'm not so sure the Giants win the game. Chargers get the momentum. They get the lead. Changes everything. But Andrew Thomas recovered the fumble. And then Jamie Gillen, on 4th down, booms a 69-yard punt. That was Dave Jennings' style as he helped tilt the field. I'm sure the Chargers thought they were getting the ball back probably on the Giants side of the 50. Now, they did get an 11-yard return, but on a 69-yard punt, your coverage guys have a job getting down there. So the 11-yard return wasn't bad, and the Chargers took over somewhere around their own 40, I believe, 42 or something like that. But at least they weren't on the Giants side of the 50. Big-time punt by Jamie Gillen, who had the best year of his career in 2024 and is kicking the ball very well so far this season. I'm glad you mentioned that, James. Matt Seeperstan noted, Week 7, 70-yard field goal. Hopefully it's halftime and not end of game. That's a good one, Matt. Look, I hope it's not true. But you and I both know how this goes. Four 60-plus yard end of fourth quarter or end of game field goals have been made against the Giants in the last 10 years. More against them than any other team in the league. So, yeah, I think someone's going to hurt the Giants with a 70-yarder. At some point, it's going to happen. Denver just seems to be as good a place as any. Matt says, start spreading the news. Game 3 will be played. It's up to you, New York, New York. Them Yankees, baby. Matt says, third out was at the wall. Scary. Matt, at some point after the show is over, I'm going to go back and take a look at the highlights. Hopefully I'll catch some of the post-game show, or I'll be able to look at the highlights on the internet. To the wall, huh? Oh, man, I'm so glad I had you guys to distract me tonight. I really am. Hey, by the way, a couple of stats I wanted to give you guys. I mentioned this. I don't know how many of you watch the Giants post-game show after every game on MSG Networks. I'm very, very thrilled and honored to be the reporter on that program. So I work the locker room, and also I work the field. When the Giants win, I also work the field and talk to players on the field and do some commentary as well. If you didn't catch the show last weekend, a couple of facts that I want to give you. One which I've looked up on my own, and then one the NFL also threw out there, and the Giants threw it out on Monday, but I went one better than them. They had mentioned, and this is true, Dexter Lawrence's interception on Sunday was the first interception by a Giants defensive lineman since Nico Lalos in 2020. And that's fine. You know, that's cool. Nico was a nice guy, was a fringe NFL player, to be honest with you. And I believe Speaking of Nico, I think he wound up with the Saints after the Giants, didn't he? I'm pretty sure. Let me just take a look for 1 second here, because that would be very ironic. Nope, nope. His only regulation NFL action was with the New York Giants. Nico did not have an opportunity to actually play with the Saints. He did go to the Saints in 22 and in 23 and in 24 during the offseason and practice squad, but never actually appeared in a game with the Saints. So anyway, Nico Lalos was the last Giants defensive lineman to intercept a pass back in 2020 before Dexter Lawrence picked off Justin Herbert on Sunday in the Chargers game. The last Giants defensive tackle to have an interception in a game was Snacks Harrison back in 2017 against Alex Smith's and the Kansas City Chiefs. Now, what Smith had done was he'd thrown the pass to tight end Travis Kelce. Kelce had the ball pop up out of his hands, and Snacks Harrison grabbed it. And so it went down officially as an interception. So that was the last interception by a Giants defensive tackle back in 2017. Snacks Harrison against Kansas City, until Dexter Lawrence came up with a pick against the Chargers on Sunday. Being a Giants historian as I am, I love to salivate over that kind of stuff. I love to bring those facts to you fans when I can, because I don't think many other people either want to dig them up, know how to dig them up, care, or quite frankly, don't think as quickly about those things as I do, because I do value myself as a Giants historian. Scott Young says, I'm with you too, Paul, on the 70-yard field goal against the Giants. Unbelievable. Laugh out loud. Yeah, you just got a feeling it's going to happen one day. Isaac Moore is back with us. Says, Dart throwing stiff arms is exciting, but leave the violence to Scat. I think Dart believes he is Scataboo on some of these plays. He has a osmosis, and he just wants to be a running back. The Focus says, we need a viable QB1 behind Dart. Winston works for next year, but scouting in the next guy needs to start now. Oh, I don't know about that, The Focus. I mean, I think they wouldn't mind next year having the developmental quarterback as number 3 behind Dart and Winston. Sure. Could it also be one of those hold the fort veterans? I suppose it could be. But because, the plan would be for Jaxson Dart to have at least 2 contracts here. You'd like him to be here for at least a decade, right? Or at least the better part of a decade before you have to start thinking about the next guy. So, no, I don't know that the next guy has to be in next year as the number 3 as someone who's a legit prospect. He could be a young guy who may have some type of future potentially, and you have him for a couple of years, and then maybe he gets away. Who knows? Anyway, what are we talking about 2026 for? Come on, The Focus, please. Got to worry about Sunday's game. Keep the focus. Focus. James O'Keefe says the Scottish Hammer did flip the field on that 69-yard punt. Absolutely. Isaac Moore says New York Squeakers. Doesn't matter. Game 3 tomorrow. Scott Young. You would think Dart would realize after going into the 10 a couple of times he doesn't like coming off the field. He needs to slide. They're protecting quarterbacks now along with players. Isaac Moore says, you see Scott shake his head after almost every play. You think they will make him stop it because it would be hard to tell if he hit his head too hard if he's always shaking it. I think he does it out of excitement, Isaac. I really do. He's a very, very wound up individual. I mean, I don't know if I've interviewed him Now, I interviewed him in the locker room. I mean, I've talked to him many times, but on the shows, on television, I had him on the MSG postgame show in the locker room after the Dallas game. And then I had him on the field. I had him on the field after Sunday's game, the win against the Chargers. And I want to say, I think I had him in the locker room after the Chiefs game as well. So I think he's actually been a part of 3 consecutive MSG postgame shows. Cam Scatterboo. How about that? He's a really good guy, by the way. And great to talk to after a game. Very cooperative. Terrific attitude. Scott Young says, didn't Graham Gano kick a long one when he was in Carolina against us to beat us? That is correct. 60-plus yarder at the end of the fourth quarter on the grass down in Carolina. Scott, that's absolutely correct. He's one of those guys who did it. Guy in Minnesota did it. Elliott in Philadelphia did it. And then Aubrey in Dallas did it. 4 60-plus yard field goals at the end of the fourth quarter to hurt the Giants. Either give them a loss or a tie. Edward Scissorhands, I want to see all tight ends on the field on the same play. Well, they have 3 of them. So you want to see Bellinger and Johnson. And why am I forgetting Manhurts? Chris Manhurts is the other tight end. Yeah, the blocking tight end. You want to see all 3 of them on the same. I wouldn't mind that on occasion. Why not? I wouldn't mind seeing an unbalanced line every once in a while on a short yardage situation either. There's one thing I will say. Bill Belichick, when he was with the Patriots, in all those years when he was winning a ton of games, he made it a point to go back and study some of the old films, the tapes, if you will, of the 1980s Bill Parcells Giants, the 86 to 90 teams that, those teams that were great playoff teams, Super Bowl contenders, won 2 rings. Belichick would go back and look at those Giants films, and he would bring them up, show sometimes those plays to his players and say, look, this is what we can do. He would steal plays from his old playbook while he was with the Patriots and also use it as a teaching tool. One of his favorite things to do was to show his strong side linebacker clips of Carl Banks, because Carl Banks was the prototype strong side linebacker of his era. There's nothing wrong with going back and looking at some of those tapes and bringing some of those plays back into the playbook today. Because you know what? The game has morphed. The game has changed. A lot of those things have been forgotten about. And if you bring some of them back out of the woodwork, defenses or offenses won't have any idea what they're looking at. You will catch them by surprise, and you will probably devastate them. Because what's one of the best things you can do as a coordinator? It's to surprise or confuse your opponent. And if you go back and unearth some plays that have gone out of style, guess what? You will surprise and confuse your opponent. And God knows the Giants have enough of championship plays in their archives. Believe me, I know. I was there for all of them. Scott Young says, I watch MSG after every Giants game, Paul. Love the show and appreciate everything you guys do for us Giants fans. You guys are the best. Scott, thank you very, very much. I appreciate you for tuning into the program. I'm going to try to take this another 10 minutes to the bottom of the hour. We are over 800 live viewers on tonight's program, and we did get a bunch more live after the Yankees knocked off Boston. So I will take it to the bottom of the hour, and I hope you guys have some more things that you want to talk about. Isaac Moore says, you think we will ever see Neal barring any injuries? They need to use him on jumbo packages. Isaac, I'm with you. I don't know exactly why he's being scratched every Sunday. The coaches will always tell you they're activating the guys for the game who they believe give them the best chance to win. That's the standard answer. And they will tell you sometimes it's about scheme. Sometimes it's about matchups. They think this combination of players on this given Sunday is the best thing that they could do. Well, to this point, Evan Neal hasn't been getting a jersey. And he had made so much progress as a guard during this offseason. I would like to see him get a jersey. I would. I'm not going to pull any punches on that one. I'd like to see him get a jersey, and I think he can be valuable, even if it's only in a niche role like you're talking about. I'd like to see him get in there because I think he can do some things to help. But that's not my call. Coach gets paid a lot of money to make those types of decisions. I don't. As they say, it's above my pay grade. The Focus says, I meant that because is injury prone, ha. I think what Focus, were you talking about quarterbacks? I got to go back now. Oh, yeah, you were talking about someone behind Dart. Yeah, I understand. Well, when I don't. Winston's not injury prone, and nor is Jameis Winston. Wilson and Winston, neither one. So Jameis Winston is signed for another season. So I think the Giants are very happy with him being the backup next year. You're claiming Dart is injury prone. No, I get it. I understand. He doesn't really appear to be, but he's certainly playing with fire. Scott Young says, I always remember George Martin returning that one against Denver. Yes, the pick in 1996. What a great day those were, the times. Oh, those were phenomenal times. Scott, I feel so privileged and so grateful to have started covering this team in 1983 when they were 3-12-1 and Bill Parcells' first year as a head coach. But you know what? It turned around very, very quickly. And by the time 85 came around, they were legitimate Super Bowl contenders. And it stayed that way through the 1990 season. In fact, to be honest, I thought they had a real chance to potentially get that far in 1993, Phil Simms and Lawrence Taylor's last season with the team. I thought they had a good enough team that they had a legitimate chance to get to that Super Bowl that year. I really did believe that under Dan Reeves, who was in his first year as a Giants head coach. What a run it was, huh? From Parcells' first year in 83, which was, again, 3-12-1, to Dan Reeves' first year in 93. That chunk of time right there. For the most part, the Giants were legit contenders and won 2 rings. It wasn't for the stupid work stoppage in 91. I think the Giants would have repeated in 91. But they had to play with those strike players and not just destroyed everything. And, of course, it didn't help that Coach Parcells resigned in the spring of 91 and Ray Hadley had to take over. That didn't help either. But the roster in 91 was good enough to win it again. Scott Young says, George Martin back in the day always seemed to make a big play. One of my all-time favorite Giants. One of mine too, Scott. One of mine too. One of my definite all-time favorite Giants, and a guy who I got to know extremely well. And to this day, every time he comes back to Jersey, I always enjoy seeing him. Isaac Moore said it's a real shame they couldn't figure it out with Neal. No question. Kaz09. Yes, I want Evan Neal jumbo with Elijah Chapman at fullback at the goal line. Get in there. Elijah Chapman is another guy who has been on the practice squad, and they have not had an opportunity because of needs on special teams and at linebacker, whether it's looking for a kicker or looking for a coverage guy, or looking for, again, a linebacker who might have to even take some snaps. They haven't been able to get Elijah Chapman activated for a game either. I think one game he got activated this year, if I'm not mistaken. I'd have to go back and look at my files. But, yes, Chapman, we know, can do some fullback stuff. That'd be awesome. Did you guys see Jaxson Dart's touchdown against the Chargers? They ran a quarterback draw out of a shotgun. It was basically nothing more than a fullback lead, just using different personnel. Dart was lined up in the shotgun, offset just to the right, almost in an H-back position, was Cam Scatterboo. Snap goes to Dart. Scatterboo then loops into the hole. The two guards in center split the interior of the defensive line. Scatterboo goes straight ahead like a freight train and obliterates the middle linebacker. And a hole that parted like the Red Sea was big enough for an elephant to run through. Jaxson Dart goes straight into the end zone for a 15-yard touchdown. It was absolute perfection. Basically, Scatterboo was running a fullback lead for Jaxson Dart. Beautiful. Beautiful. Isaac Moore, any talk on the wide receiver front? Looking for guys. I heard they brought someone in for a look. Reportedly, there'll be someone in tomorrow, but not a name that you would recognize. And quite frankly, Isaac, I'm under the impression that they probably won't add any wide receiver of significance off of the street. Aiden Fink says, Winston got hurt twice with New Orleans, including a torn ACL. Yeah, but he's not injury prone. I understand. But that doesn't make him injury prone through a career that, was almost a decade. Edward Scissorhands, at this rate, we might as well trade Neal and Banks to Philly. We all know they'll end up there either way. I don't understand why Shane doesn't cash in on expiring contracts. Aiden Fink says, Paul, why did they have Banks returning kicks on Sunday? Made me very nervous. Is he even listed on the depth chart as a returner? They took a shot with it because he's very strong and very tough. He actually had a pretty nice return, I might add. Edward Scissorhands, when is McFadden expected back? We appreciate you. Well, I appreciate you for being part of the show, Edward. McFadden is hoping to be back for the final month of the season. Matt Seepersad, Aiden, he had some returns at Maryland, if I'm not mistaken, for touchdowns. I don't recall that, Matt. But again, now Matt says he returned a punt. Here's the thing about Banks. He's tough. He's physical. He's got a big frame. He's energetic. They practiced him in the last week or so a little bit on kickoff returns, and he returned a nice one the other day. So if that's what they want to do, I guess so, right? Armand Duda says, Yankees win. Armand, you say you're sorry you're late, huh? I suspect that was because of the Yankees game. We will excuse you for that one. I'm just glad we're not doing a Giants show tomorrow because, once again, Yankees are in the playoffs, deciding game 3. I don't know how many of you would be working our show or looking at our show tomorrow while the Yankees would be in a deciding game. IIP, the unknown, says the stadium's energy was incredible live. Hasn't been like that since Eli days. Hope that fan energy stays. Do you think we had another wide receiver or running back to the Saints game? You're right. The stadium was lit against the Chargers on Sunday. People came out. It was a gorgeous day to come out for a football game. beautiful, beautiful day. And the excitement over Jaxson Dart's first pro start was very tangible throughout the building, on the field, on the bench, in the locker room. And the Giants fed off of that. There was no question. Armand Duda says it felt like Giant Stadium. I won't say that, but it certainly felt alive. It was electric. And I do think it was a lot of fun. And do I think it made a difference? Yeah, I kind of do think it might have made a difference. As far as wide receiver, no, I don't necessarily think they will. Running back, if anything, they would bring up Turbo Miller, but I'm not so sure that they're going to do that quite yet this week either. Edward Scissorhands, I'm looking forward to seeing McFadden in the playoffs then. Oh, I'm sure he would shake your hand and agree with that sentiment in a heartbeat. And Matt Seepersad says, Oxford, Mississippi is right up the road from New Orleans. Wonder if any of the Ole Miss faithful will be cheering Jaxson Dart on Sunday. Matt, you're right. You'll remember last week that I had the Ole Miss play-by-play guy, David Killam. He was on our program last week. He gave us a great interview, great information on Dart. He had told me that there were quite a few people, bushels of people from Ole Miss who were going to make the 5-hour drive down to New Orleans to see Jaxson play against the Saints. So Dart is going to have a cheering section at Sunday's game. I don't know exactly what the number is. I don't know how many. I don't know if it's a couple of bus loads, a bunch of vans. I have no idea. But you are right. There are going to be a bunch of folks from Rebel Nation cheering on Jaxson Dart at the Superdome on Sunday. And I'm sure he's going to love that support because he was telling me how much he appreciates the Rebel community. Those people absolutely adore their football stars in that part of the state. And that's very cool. That's very cool. He said it's just a wonderful, wonderful atmosphere and such a tight-knit community. So he is incredibly appreciative of all of the fans from Ole Miss who continue to root and support him. And I know he's very much looking forward to seeing however many of them make the trip to the Superdome. Armand says it would be great to have McFadden back. Matt Seepersad says, I'm not a young man like you, Paul. It's bedtime for me here in Florida. Thanks for a great show. Good night, Giants Nation, and go Big Blue. I'm about to sign off too, Matt. This is it. We went a little bit over the 90 minutes. Scott Young says, really hope I live to see the day Giants have their own stadium and doesn't share with anyone. Miss Giant Stadium. Severely love that place. Armand Duda says, good night, Matt. Go Big Blue. And Armand says, we do have our own stadium. Our little brother just lives with us. Well, that'll do it, folks, for tonight's edition of the Big Blue Breakdown Live. As always, we'll be back on Friday morning. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel because we're going to be back on Friday morning with our 20-minute preview with the 3 key matchups to watch as the Giants go to New Orleans to take on the Saints Sunday for a 1 o'clock kickoff at the New Orleans Superdome. Then again, we'll be back on Monday morning with the game balls and gassers for the Giants. The details as to on offense, defense, and special teams, the guys who got it done, and also we'll mention the guys who need to run laps because they weren't up to par. And then, of course, next week, programming note, folks, the Giants are going to be on Thursday Night Football against the Philadelphia Eagles on Thursday night, October 9th. We will not be doing a show next Wednesday. We have to move it one day earlier to Tuesday. So next week's program will not be at our regularly scheduled time, Wednesday night, 8 p.m. Eastern Time live. We are going to be on Tuesday, October the 7th. Tuesday, October the 7th, 8 p.m. Eastern Time, live. Another edition of the Big Blue Breakdown Live where we take your chats, your phone calls, your video calls. We got no phone calls and no video calls tonight. I don't know why, but we didn't. But we got it done anyway with your chats. And as always, I appreciate your time and your interest in not only the New York Giants franchise, but our program here as we try to bring you the most information possible so that you can continue to enjoy New York Giants football. Stay tuned to the New York Giants on SI YouTube channel and media network for more Giants information during the course of the week. Until then, please do subscribe. I'm Paul Dottino. We'll see you next time.